DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is a go-getter energy that will move you to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. You know that energy that I'm talking about there. And then we put all this together into one philosophy, one framework, one approach, one mindset, one mentality, one lifestyle, way of living. We wrote a book on the subject, and you're listening to the Daily Masterclass all under one umbrella called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to be both familiar and unique. Now, the first question, as soon as you hear that topic, is, well, why would you want to be familiar and unique at the same time? And then how could you actually do it? Well, how, I'm going to tell you in this master class here today. But the why would you even want to do this is because knowing that there's competition out there and knowing that you're trying to separate yourself from other people, you're trying to get the same, you're going after the same eyes and ears and maybe palates, taste buds that other people are going after, depending on what you're offering, what you're selling. The reason why you would want to be both familiar and unique is because you want people to be able to understand you, but at the same time understand that there's something about you that is not the same as everybody else. So you're not commoditized. But at the same time, you don't be so different that people can't understand, what the hell it is that you're offering. And we'll get into that as we get into our points. First, let me tell you, I have a text line where I want you to text me and tell me what are you going to do different? What adjustments can you make to your offering and your approach based on what you hear today? My number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. So that's kind of like the call-in line. If this was a radio show, since it's not radio. If it was radio, I'll just give you a phone number, let you call in, and I'll talk to you live on the line. But since this is not radio, it's a podcast, I call mine a masterclass, but we're on the podcasting app, so we'll just allow for that. Then you can text me and you can let me know, based on what you hear here today. You can answer the question I just gave you. Or you can share something else. So you got something else that you want to say, may not even be related to this episode. You can do that as well. Again, that's the number. The number is down below in the description of this episode, and also any episode that I reference in these episodes will also be listed down below in the show notes with links to those episodes. So I often get people asking me, Dre, do you have an episode on this subject, or that subject? Usually the answer is yes. There are two ways that you can get those. One is actually three ways. There are four ways. One is that you can look through the app that you are listening to me on now. So if you're on the Apple Podcast app or the Spotify app, you can search through the episodes. The thing is, those apps do not load but so many episodes. They only load a certain number. I don't even know what the exact limit is, because I see with different shows, depending on who each of us as hosts are using as our host, meaning our web host for our shows, some shows load more episodes than others. So I've seen this show load 350, maybe 700. Spotify seems to load more than Apple. I don't know. I haven't looked in a while, so I don't know if that's changed. But anyway, all of our episodes, we have over 1,800 here, is not going to go all the way back to episode 1. So if you're looking for something that's in the last couple hundred, you can probably find it in the app that you're listening to this on, such as Apple or Spotify. That's one way. The second way is that you can go to DreAllDay.com, which is my homepage website, and you can just search in the search bar, just at the very homepage, just click on the menu bar if you're on mobile, or the little search icon at the top right corner of the screen, and just type in what you're looking for. If you know the episode number, either one of those, and the episode will come up in the search results. That's the second way. The third way is that in any one of these episodes, when I mention a specific episode, that episode will be noted down below in the show notes. And if we happen to miss one, you can send me a text and let me know, hey, you mentioned episode 205, but you didn't put a link to episode 205. We'll make sure we get that fixed. Usually we have those right. And the fourth way is if you go to workonyourgamepodcast.com, workonyourgamepodcast.com. Not only can you listen to any episode in the history of the show there, we also have the one thing that I had someone ask me about the other day, is we have a full master list of every episode in the history of the show, all listed on one page. So if you want to see every episode that we ever did and just a list of every episode, you can just scroll through. What did Dre talk about in episode number 1000 or episode 592? All of those are listed there at workonyourgamepodcast.com. All that said, let's get into the points for today's episode, which is how to be both familiar and unique at the same time. And since I just told you the last couple of days we've been talking about how to cut through the fat and strategies for, the framework for selling yourself. We're going to tie up this 3-part little mini series here of these related topics on how to make yourself familiar and unique at the same time. Point number 1, be similar enough that people can understand what it is that you're doing, but yet different enough to distinguish yourself, which is basically the overall of today's topic. So just in case you were wondering, well, why would it even matter and why would someone want to put this combination together? I just explained it to you in that sentence right there. So when you're understanding human beings, we are creatures of habit. I know that there are a lot of people listening to this. You may be a creative or an entrepreneur. You're a type of person with that more disagreeable mindset, not disagreeable meaning being a negative person, but disagreeable meaning that, as I talked about in episode 1698, why being disagreeable is the key to your success, meaning you don't just follow the protocols and the patterns that have already been laid out. You're the type of person who might want to go on you might choose a different path. You choose the road less traveled, as they say, and you want to create something new and something different. That's something that I did. It's why I became an entrepreneur. And any of you out there who are in that same, that same space or same frame of mind, you're creating something that doesn't already exist. You're not just doing more of what already is. But when you do this, you have to be careful that you're not so unique that people don't quite understand what the hell you're talking about. So you got to have some similarity and some difference at the same time. This is an art. There's an art to this, to where people can get it, but at the same time, they're like, oh, okay. Not only do I understand it, but you're not the same as everybody else. You're a bit different, and so you got your own lane going on over here. That's the whole point of doing this, especially those of you who are in the situations, as we talked about the last couple of days, where you need to be selling yourself and you want people to know who you are. You want to cut through the fat like we talked about yesterday. You need to sell yourself like we talked about 2 days ago. So I'll give you a shortcut example. All you need to do here to follow what I just told you, be similar but different, is to combine 2 known things and just create a brand new combination based on those 2 known things. So when you combine 2 things that are already known, nobody's going to be looking at you crazy because they know exactly what those 2 things are. You're taking 2 things that may be commodities and everyone has accepted them as existing. But at the same time, you're the first one, or at least in their mind, maybe the first one to put them together in a combination. And now everybody's like, okay, I get part 1 and I get part 2, but I never seen anybody put them together and create part 3. But I get it because I know what both of those pieces are. I understand every piece. I just never seen the combination. So the only jump that people had to make mentally is just understanding the combination, but they don't have to understand the parts. So you're just the first one to put them together. And so it's not hard for them, and it's still new. This is exactly what you want. Something that's not hard for people to understand, yet at the same time, it's unique and it's novel, and it's like, oh, okay, I didn't think of that. You want to be able to see that light bulb going off in somebody's head, right above their head, when you share what it is that you're doing. I'll give you some examples of this where people have done it. Right now, you're listening to a combination of radio and on-demand consumption. We call them podcasts. That's all this is. You took the radio. Everybody knows what the radio is, right? Maybe some of you who are younger, you might not even be aware of the radio, but they probably have one in your car. You probably don't use it, but they do have one. The radio is air. It is not air, but through the air waves, there is some either music or people talking. It could be talk radio, it could be music, it could be a combination of both, where a person or people are streaming whatever they're streaming through that airwave, and there's something going on 24 hours a day. Now, a radio show might be I remember when I was growing up, I would listen to the radio before I got ready for school or while I was getting ready for school and stuff. And there'd be a morning show from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then there'd be the afternoon guy from 10 to 2. Then it'd be the afternoon rush person from like 2 to 6, then the night person from 6 to 10. Things like that. They would have their radio spots. And the thing is, if you missed the radio show that day, let's say you just didn't wake up early, or you overslept, or you had a day off from school, you missed the radio show people that day from 6 to 10 because they were on, but you just missed it because you didn't wake up to listen to it. The difference that we have now is with podcasts, it's still the same thing. People are still just talking and sharing what they want to share. Difference is now you can do it on demand. What's on demand? You get something like TiVo. I don't even know what they call it now on TV. I don't even own a TV, but if you have any kind of a cable TV package, you get your on demand where you can record a show. It comes on 8 o'clock, but you don't have to watch it at 8 o'clock. You can watch it later. You can edit out the commercials so you don't see any of them. Watch it straight through. All podcasting did was combine the two. All right, YouTube is the same thing. They took TV, they put it on the phone. There's a combination right there. Put TV, put it on the phone. Simple as that. and they added another one. So they didn't just take two things, they put three: TV, phone, and on demand. So I can go on YouTube right now, on my YouTube app, and I can search Dre Baldwin, or I can search Mike Tyson, or I can search, name somebody that you're interested in, LeBron James, and I can just watch video that normally would have been on, I would have had to watch TV to have seen it, or maybe not if it's something that was made exclusively for YouTube, is on demand and is right there on my phone. And I can carry my phone around with me all the time, as opposed to a TV, which I probably wouldn't be carrying around with me all the time. So podcasting, YouTube, two examples. Now let's talk blogging. Blogging plus a limit in how much space you have, you get Twitter. What is blog? What is Twitter? Twitter is just a way for you to blog. It's just micro blogging. That's what they used to call it back when it first came out. Maybe between 2008 and 2010, they referred to Twitter as micro blogging, whereas you posting something, it goes on your little feed, but you only got, at the time, I think it was 140 characters. Now they doubled it. Now it's 280 characters. So all they did was take blogging and they just gave you a limit. They made it finite. All right, you can't write as long a piece as you want. You can't write a whole article here. You can't write a dissertation. You only get 280 characters, but you get to post something. And you post it to the internet and everybody can see it. And it becomes a record, and people can screenshot it and they got receipts on you. That is Twitter. How about you take having friends? People here have friends and family and associates. You only have to know these people. You only have to like them. Friends, family, associates, just social interaction. And then you put it on the internet. What do we call that? We call that social media. If you take, so these are all combinations what I'm giving you here. And these are ways that people took things that were familiar, combined them together, and they created something new that everybody understood immediately as soon as they saw it. As soon as you saw Twitter and they told you what it was, even if you didn't like it, I remember when Twitter first came out, a bunch of older folks who weren't so internet savvy or even interested in the internet like that, or social media like that, were like, this is stupid, Twitter's dumb. Who cares what somebody eating for dinner? I don't care that you just got off a plane in Portland. Who cares? But eventually, all of those people have come around, and some of them very prominent on social media these days. But the point is, everybody got it as soon as they heard it, because all we were doing was combining things that people already knew. So it's a stroke of genius where you can figure these out. If you take three forms of fighting, you take people fighting standing up, such as boxing, people fighting in the clinch, such as, I don't know, something like wrestling. And then you take like ground fighting, like grappling or something like that. Don't get me to explaining these things. And you put them all three together, what do you get? You get what they call MMA, mixed martial arts, the UFC. All they did was combine things that people already knew about, and they created something brand new, and it's a very popular thing. And all of these things that I mentioned are very popular because one reason that they're popular is because it was easy for people to understand them as soon as they heard about them, because all it did was combine things we already knew about. So what I'm instructing you to do is to figure out how you can do the same thing with yourself. Looking at myself, one of the things that I did was I combined playing basketball and putting it on the internet. Now, depending on when and how you heard of me, you might think, well, Dre, that's not unique. A bunch of people do that. Well, here's the thing. Nobody was doing it before I started doing it. I was putting basketball videos on the internet before it was cool to put basketball videos on the internet. We're talking 2005 here. I was the first person doing that. You can look that up. Another thing that I did was I took being an athlete and just talking about the stuff I was doing sports-wise. I was doing that through YouTube, and I was doing it on YouTube with the basketball as well. And then people started asking about the mental game stuff. So I started talking. I don't think I was the first person ever. Definitely was the first person ever to take what I was doing in sports and combine it with the mental game. But I think my approach and the way that I talked about it and the way that just my personal style is what made it unique. So it was like two things I combined: sports, mental game, and then I put a little bit of seasoning on it, which was my personal style. And that became this whole thing that we now have called Work on Your Game. And then we took Work on Your Game and we've expanded it. So just because you create something one way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You take something like Twitter. It started with blogging and a space limit, but now if you look at Twitter, I don't know if all of you are even on Twitter, but I don't use Twitter so much as a place to just share my random thoughts. What I use Twitter for now is my news feed. I do not watch the news. I told you on 1474 that you shouldn't watch the news either. I do not trust a lot of the overall mainstream media, because a lot of times they're just trying to craft their narrative based on who they like and who they don't like, which is unfortunate for us consumers. But so what I do is on Twitter, I basically have created, what's the word I'm looking for? The word just was on the tip of my tongue, but I forgot it. But anyway, I've aggregated a bunch of different people who share news, quote unquote, and I can triangulate, and I can get different perspectives from a bunch of different people on the same things, and then I can piece together, all right, what's the actual truth in all of this? And that's the way I get my news, is by scrolling through Twitter. So I see what's trending, see who's talking about what. I got a few people who I trust to hear what they have to say, even though I may not agree with them, but I trust that they are giving me some useful information in there, and that's how I get my news. So Twitter has actually added in news to blogging and a limited amount of space. So these are all ways that you can combine things that already exist to make something new. Have I given you enough examples? Hope so. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to be both familiar and unique. Number 2, emphasize your distinctions out of all proportion. That means take whatever it is about you that makes you different from anyone else and emphasize that, overemphasize it to the point that you're being kind of hyperbolic about it, and you're exaggerating it in such a way that people know you're being hyperbolic and exaggerating it, but they like it because they know that what you're saying is based in truth. It's not that you're saying everything I'm saying is 100% accurate. Like if you have a horse that can jump over, those horse competitions I used to see on ESPN where the person's riding the horse and the horse jumps over the little bars and stuff, and they win prize. There's whole competitions for this. All right, so the horse can jump over the bar and then say, hey, the horse can jump over the Grand Canyon. The horse can jump over a mountain. Now, I know that your horse can't jump over a mountain, but when you say it, I get it, because you're like, all right, this is the best jumping horse that I have. That's the point that you're making, so we don't have to take it literally. That's what I'm telling you to do when you emphasize your distinctions out of all proportion. So when I take something like taking basketball videos and combine them with the internet, well, now there's thousands of people who do that. It's not really unique anymore. It was unique in 2005. It's not unique anymore. So how would I make myself stand out? Well, I don't really have to think about that anymore because I don't play basketball anymore. But if I was, I would say something like, okay, yeah, I put basketball videos on the internet and now there's thousands of people who are also doing it, imitating. But hey, I actually played real basketball against real professionals. So that would separate me from a bunch of those other people who are doing it, but they never took their game to the highest level, to the top 1% level. That's what I would do if I was still in that space. These are just ideas, the kind of things that I think about sometimes if I was trying to figure out how I would separate myself. So let's talk about something that I am actively doing. I took sports and combined it with the mental game and put it out into the business world. Now, am I the first or only person doing that? Absolutely not. So how do I separate myself? Listen, I got this specific framework called Work on Your Game. And I have some specific frameworks within it that other people don't have. I own those frameworks to where when you mention one of them, you got to mention me. You got to talk about me. So now I separate myself in that way, and also take my presentation and the way that I talk, and that seasoning, that little bit of flavor that I put on my presentation that nobody else can replicate because they don't talk how I talk. They don't have my presentation. They don't look like me. They don't sound like me. They don't use words. They don't put words together the same way that I do. These are all things that separate me from other people. So that little bit of seasoning changes the whole meal. Any of you who's a cook, the type of seasoning you put on food could change the entire experience for another person. For somebody like me, for example, I don't like spicy food. So if you ever make me food, do not put anything spicy on it, not even mild. Some people say it's only mild, Dre. No, mild is spicy. If you have to call it mild, then it's too spicy. Don't put any spice on my food. But anyway, that's a different conversation, maybe for a different episode of this show. What I'm telling you here in point number 2 is emphasize your distinctions out of all proportion. In other words, what about you makes you different from others who might be able to say, hey, I'm doing a similar thing, or even using a similar combination? Because once you put your combination out there, understand it doesn't mean you're going to be the only one forever doing that thing. If you're the only one doing it, then maybe it's not really that good. If your thing is good, other people are going to imitate it and do the same thing. So when I started combining basketball with the internet and putting it on YouTube, thousands of other people started doing it because it was a good thing. It was a good idea. So a bunch of other people started doing it. So now, all right, what's going to make you different now? So we are always evolving over time, people. So once you figure this out, it doesn't mean you're done. You still have to keep doing things to own it. So that difference, whatever that difference is, and you must figure this out, this is what you will need to make the first thing people see and hear about you. You figure out the difference and make that, let me make sure I say that sentence right. Make it the first thing that people see and hear about you. So yes, I'm in this combination. Maybe the combination itself can be the thing at first, but then when that thing becomes a commodity, now the first thing they need to know about you is what makes you different from everybody else who has also co-opted that commodity. Then, what you figure it out it is, Repeat it and remind people over and over again what that distinction is. What's the one thing that you're going to remember about me? Not necessarily that I have a podcast, not necessarily that I played basketball or in the mental game or business or any of those things. It's work on your game. That's the thing. If you remember one thing about me, just remember work on your game. Now, why do I want you to remember work on your game and not basketball or podcasts or books or mental game or business? It's because nobody else can claim work on your game. Other people podcast and write books and play basketball and did YouTube videos. Nobody can say work on your game. So that's the thing that separates me from anybody else, because it makes me different. Nobody else can say it. If you look it up, you're going to come up with my name. And now it's established enough that when people hear it, first of all, you understand it. And secondly, when you go look it up, again, it's going to all come back to me. All roads will point back to me. So you want to do these in the correct order, as people won't be ready to know about what makes you different until first they can understand, that you exist, period, on a basic level. So the basic level is, this is what I'm offering, this combination. And then the next thing is, all right, here's how I'm different from everybody else. Do these in the proper order. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to be both familiar and unique at the same time. Third thing, be bold. Make a bold claim or multiple bold claims. Take bold actions with the way that you're trying to make yourself stand out. The question you're going to answer is, what about your offer makes it undeniable? What about what you're doing makes it something that people absolutely need? This is something you need to figure out. And this one you may not know up front. Let's be clear. You might not know from the very beginning what makes you really different from everybody else, because you need to put yourself out there to the market so the market can respond to you and tell you, okay, this part of what you're talking about is what we really like. When I do my keynote presentations, a lot of times I'll give 3, 4, or 5 different points in each of my presentations. I don't know which one is going to be the strongest one. And when I say the strongest, not necessarily what I say best, but what does the audience remember? What's the thing that they keep in mind based on what I'm talking about? And when I find out what that is, then that's the one that I'm going to keep emphasizing. Then that's the one that, I might go deeper into that. Then that's the one that, I might write a book on it. I might do a whole presentation just around that one point. But I got to get the feedback from the audience. So figure out what is that thing that is really the strongest part of what you're offering. And that you may be able to drill down, niche down into doing just specifically that. I'll give you another example. If we go back to what I just told you. When I was making videos, I was playing basketball, putting videos on the internet on YouTube. Then a whole bunch of other people started doing it. So that wasn't unique anymore. So what about me made me unique? I figured out what are the parts of what Dre is doing that makes him unique, because all right, everybody's doing dribbling drills. There are a few people who can dunk and all this stuff. So what am I going to do? Okay, well, people were really coming to me because they liked the way that I would talk about the mental game. So that was something that could separate me, because not every basketball player can explain their mentality. They could play basketball, but they couldn't explain their mentality. Or a lot of players couldn't explain how they did the stuff they did on the court. They could do it and they could show it to you, but they couldn't explain it to you in words the way that I could. So I used my ability to articulate to separate myself. Then when I started making more moves on the business side of things, I started explaining that and saying, hey, here's how I took what I did in sports and I'm starting to translate it over to the business world. I noticed that not a lot of athletes were doing it. So there's 3 things right there that made me a little bit different. I was still doing the thing, but these are things that made me a little bit different. And how did I know that these things made me different? Because I was paying attention to the feedback I was getting from my audience. I noticed that people in the audience were saying, well, Dre, I see how you kind of start building a brand. I want to do that. I noticed that. I paid attention to that. People said, well, Dre, I like how you talk about the mental side of the game, not just playing. And listen, I don't even play basketball, but I like that. I noticed, I paid attention to that. Or how people would say, a lot of players be playing, but they can't really explain how to do the move. Dre, I like how you explain how to do the move. You're not just doing the move. I paid attention to that. So these things, I started noticing these distinctions that could separate me from other people. And again, it wasn't someone came up to me and said, Dre, these are the 3 things that separate you. I had to pay attention. I had to notice these things. And this is your job as well. So when you start making your bold claims, these are the things you need to emphasize. Okay. No other person in here who's making YouTube basketball videos could say that they went and played overseas and wrote a book about how to do it. I could say that boldly and I could say it out loud and nobody could challenge me on it because it's true. But I couldn't do that until after several years I had done the things to be able to prove that. You got to be able to back up your bold claims, folks. So when I tell you make a bold claim, I don't say just go out and say something crazy to get people's attention, because someone's going to make you prove it. All right, you make a bold claim, you got to be able to prove it. So what can you help other people do or help them get that other people can't? What separates you from everyone else in the space? Do you have any evidence to support your claims? Evidence helps. All right, we call that social proof these days. Why does it matter? All right, because when you can answer these questions, you can draw attention to yourself by letting people know that you have an answer to this question. All right, not only am I doing A, but I also offer B, C, and D that nobody else who does A can also say this. When you are able to do that and you can prove it, then you can jump to the front of the line. Now, people have to come to you because there's no other way they can get B, C, and D without coming through you. So everybody who needs B, C, and D, those are your target audience. I just gave you the whole formula between 2 days ago's episodes, yesterday and today. So between 1849, 1850, and today, 1851, you got the whole formula laid out right there in front of you. All you got to do is follow this. Now, of course, this can be fleshed out in even more detail, and I'm going to be doing a workshop again on these things moving forward. But this is just keep that in mind. That is coming. Let me just say that before I say too much. Let me recap today's class, which is how to be both familiar and unique. Point number 1, be similar enough that people can understand you, but different enough that you distinguish yourself. An easy example is to combine 2 new things and create a new combination. Podcasting is radio plus on demand. YouTube is TV plus being on the phone. Blogging plus space limits equaled Twitter. Now they added a new twist. It's kind of like a news feed. Friends and family and foes and people you know plus the internet equals social media. Standing up fighting, clinching fighting, and ground fighting equals mixed martial arts. Point number 2, distinctions. Emphasize your distinctions out of all proportion. So what about you is different from others who are similar to you? Figure out that difference. It may take a little bit of time. You have to get some activity knowledge. Once you know what it is, repeat and remind people of that distinction over and over again so that you can separate yourself from the imitators and the Me Too people who are going to come around and basically dilute the fact that you're different. So your first step was connecting with the familiar. Now you separate yourself. So you connected with familiar things, then you became unique. There's a 2-step process. But again, make sure you follow in the proper order. Don't be unique first because you'll confuse people. They won't even pay attention to you because they don't know what you're doing. Point number 3, be bold, make bold claims, and take bold actions behind them. But make sure that whatever it is you're saying that makes you undeniable, that makes you different, that makes you stand out and better and different, even better than everybody else, what can you help people do that other people can't? Make sure you can back that up. Have some evidence behind it. Have some proof that you can actually prove, because when you can answer that question, you can draw attention to yourself. And when you can prove things, you can jump to the front of the line because there's no competition. So listen to the last 3 episodes. This one and the previous 2 episodes, I gave you a little mini pack here about how to separate yourself from the crowd. For any of you who is building a brand, trying to stand out, whether you're speaking, doing coaching, selling books, putting products on the internet, trying to just get yourself known and create an entity for yourself. These last 3 episodes have done that. And if you like these, text me and let me know, because I will have a workshop coming in the future where I'm going to be going over this stuff for anybody building a brand, getting yourself out there, building your business, getting yourself known. And listen, if you're reading between the lines of what I'm saying right here, I'm already planting a seed in your mind for this guy from playing basketball to YouTube to the mental game to the business side. Now I'm telling you how I'm going to teach other people to do a similar thing, even if you never picked up a basketball before in your life. So this is the way that you can kind of evolve what you're doing. But you just have to, again, the reason I know I can do something like this because I'm paying attention to the feedback that I'm getting from my audience. All that said, send me a text. Tell me the best thing you got from today's episode. Tell me the one that you need to use the most and what combinations you're putting together. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.